if you're alive as a human being on Earth, as a sentient being, sentient mortal being, there's no easy path. The ratios might change between difficulty and easiness and happiness and suffering, but every life contains the same elements. You know, if you won, I don't know, a reality show, and you won America's Got Talent, and you were given your residency in Las Vegas or something, then, you know, you wouldn't be discovering new emotions. No. You know, the emotions you'd be feeling, you had felt before. The ratio of those emotions might change. It might worsen or it might get better, but you know, you wouldn't. And I feel like we place so much value on material things, external things, and we don't actually see the sameness of things. And actually, what can be dangerous, I think, and what I touched on a bit in the Midnight Library, is the idea that salvation can be found by getting some kind of success, because that's actually, you know, it's okay when you haven't got it and you're striving towards it, because then you've got that forward momentum. But then you actually get the thing and you realize you're not saved, and you've still got the same brain and you've still got the same thoughts. And then what do I do now? Because I thought the problem was because I lacked something. Then I got the thing and I had the same problem. So I have to sort of look inward and sort of, then you sort of have a breakdown and fall apart. So part of it was kind of like a warning off of that sort of way of thinking, I suppose. And I think it hit the right time as well. Obviously, I didn't know about COVID when I was writing this in 2018, 2019, but I think it chimed with the thoughts people were having, that feeling of being stuck and wanting to find some sort of acceptance over uncertainty. So I think, yeah, I wouldn't say any of us were lucky to have gone through that year, but I do think there was something about the timing of the Midnight Library that was chimes with people.
I think that's a really interesting question. I think women were allowed, because in the West things were looser. They were more they were moment to moment being defined. I think women were allowed to assert themselves, and certainly the women of the Barbary Coast were revered. They were respected. You know, there were moments when if they appeared, you know, in an auditorium, people stood as they took their seats. I mean, there was a kind of reverence for these women, and I love creating those kind of characters who have agency, who go against the grain.
Well, let's talk about Hank Zipser a little bit.
Yes.
You know, when we were kids, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity in the children's books that we read. Certainly, there was not a lot of cultural diversity, and I certainly don't remember reading a book about kids who had learning differences or who had dyslexia. Tell us about how you first came to write the Hank Zipser books.
Okay, two things. One, I started writing by a fluke. There was a lull in my acting career. Somebody said, write books for children about your learning challenges. You know, when you tell a child early enough, often enough, they're stupid, they're lazy, don't be a moron, you should know that by your age. We believe it.
Yeah.
And I thought I was stupid for the longest time. I think until in my 50s. So I said, okay, I can't write a book. He said, I'm going to introduce you to Lynn Oliver. We had lunch. I had horrible fish. But the meeting was great. And we hatched Hank Zipser. So you write what you know.
Oh, I am so glad. I can't tell you that how much I love this question, because I'm a lifelong musical theater freak.
Yeah.
And one of the
Yeah.
things that I've always loved, that I've wanted to see if I could translate into fiction, into straight regular plays, into screenplays, is the emotional energy of a musical. You know, the thrill, the high you get from a musical number. And that I Want song, and I am a huge Howard Ashman fan.
Yeah.
In fact, my play Jeffrey was done at the theater at the WPA, which is a small theater in New York, where a lot of Howard's musicals began, including The Little Shop of Horrors. But so there's a size to musical moments and to an I Want song, because what happens is it's a time when a character is alone with the audience. So they actually do speak fully and right out there from their heart. And that's something a novel can do actually quite well. And I thought, okay, but I need to isolate Carter. I need to get him into both a headspace and a physical space where he feels comfortable revealing himself rather completely. And that's what that scene in St. Patrick's does, and why it is the equivalent of a song or a monologue on stage, of where someone just lays it out there. And I thought, no, if I want the reader to invest in Carter and to get on board for his particular journey, and to decide that he's worth traveling with, they really need to hear something intensely personal from him. And I think that needed to happen up front, and that you think, okay, this guy may also have more layers to him than I initially imagined. So yeah, it's funny, because I just find that it's something that from very early on in my career, that musical theater energy was something I aspired to.
And I was thinking of that because I have another line in the book where Frankie kind of, is looking at herself and thinking about how other people see her. And she makes a comment that people, wouldn't love Ophelia half so much if she was older and mad, and they would just look at her as kind of an inconvenience. And so I do kind of think that there are certain things that when you're younger are maybe admired and romanticized. And then, when you get to Frankie's age, the fact that she is so headstrong, it is looked at, she's difficult, and she's, someone that people find rather frustrating. Whereas, she looks at Gilly and she sees some of these same qualities, and she recognizes that they have a lot of similarities. And I think that's one of the things that, again, makes their relationship so contentious, is the fact that she is in this moment in her life where I think Harold says to her at one point, you're not a debut writer anymore. You're past that stage. And it's kind of thrown her and made her a bit bitter as well, because, she is who she is. It's how she's always been. But it's kind of society and the expectations of who she should be as a woman in the 60s that are kind of changing. She has not.
Yeah. What word do you like to work into your writing?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I have a favorite word in
Okay.
all the English language, and it's ethereal. I
Right.
think ethereal is an absolutely beautiful word that sounds like exactly what it is, which is an otherworldly beauty. And that's how I perceived my wife, my very first date with her. She had this ethereal quality. And so that's my favorite word.
What word do you hate to encounter in other people's writing?
Ooh. I think anything that, I don't know. I think like pop culture references, things like that. I don't know why. It takes me out of the book a little bit. Yeah, I would say those. I'm not fond of that.
Where's your favorite place to write?
Anywhere lying down. I find that may be the primary reason why I'm a writer, is that it's a job you can do lying down, aside from, I guess, mattress tester. But no, I always begin on a chaise. For many years, it was using a yellow legal pad. I find the MacBook is remarkably adaptable to the supine position. So yeah, that's where it starts for me.
Where could you never write?
Actually, I can never write in a writer's room. I bought this house. We bought this house in Brighton in England, and it's got a shed, and I want it to be like Roald Dahl and retreat to my writer's shed. And as soon as I sit down and it's in a work environment and this is a writer's place, I don't work. I have to almost write in a way where it doesn't feel like work. So that tends to be on the sofa with my feet up and in the living room, which isn't always the healthiest place, but it's the way it is.
To what rule of grammar do you pay least attention?
Avoid contractions. I think there's an avoid contract. I love I think people talk in contractions. Not in this book as much. They didn't then, but I'm a big contraction person.
What was the first book you remember reading?
Oh, the first book I remember reading. Well, what immediately popped into my mind were these little biographies that we had at the back of our classroom when I was in third grade. And they were religious biographies. I went to Catholic grammar school.
Yeah.
And I can remember this biography of Saint Teresa of the Little Flower that I read and reread and reread. What's funny is that I associate that book with tuna fish sandwiches because I won't even go into why.
Oh, gosh. What are you reading now?
Well, I truthfully am reading Escaping Dreamland, as we've been discussing, but what's next on my TBR pile is Little Pieces of Me by Alison Hammer.
Mm-hmm. What book would you like to have written?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know if I would have liked to have written it, but every day I'm grateful for Rachel Collins' Goodbye Vitamin.
Mm-hmm. What sort of book would you like to write, but probably never will?
Well, to the point about Le Carré, I'm thinking I'm going to write, my next book that I'm thinking about is has a murder mystery kind of component. So I never say never.
Yeah. And finally, what would you like to hear a reader tell you?
I love when readers tell me they ignore their family, stay up all night, and cry. So it's very evil, but I love to hear those things.